There is a lie that feels less like a lie than a promotion. It whispers that rules are for ordinary people, and that if you are exceptional enough, brilliant enough, destined for something great, then the lines that hold everyone else back simply do not apply to you. Now picture a young man in a sweltering city, starving in a room the size of a coffin, so sharp and so proud that he has half convinced himself he is one of the rare few who are allowed to step over the line, even to kill, if it serves a greater end. One day he picks up an axe to prove it. This is the story of what happens after. Not the crime, which takes only minutes, but the punishment, the one no judge ever handed down, the one that begins the instant the deed is done and unfolds inside a single human mind. Dostoevsky is not really interested in whether the young man is clever enough to get away with it. He is after a stranger, deeper question. What does a person do to their own soul when they decide that other people are smaller than they are? Because the wall this book is truly about is not the one between a criminal and the police. It is the wall a proud mind builds between itself and everyone it has quietly decided it is better than. The book is Crime and Punishment, written in 1866 by Fyodor Dostoevsky, a man who knew ruin from the inside. He had been sentenced to death, marched before a firing squad, reprieved at the last second, and sent to a Siberian prison camp for 4 years. And he came back convinced that no idea, however brilliant, is worth more than a single human soul. He sets his novel in the crushing heat of St. Petersburg, a city of slums, gin shops and desperate people, and he opens it not with a bang, but with a heavy, hesitant step, in a line famous for its dread. Dostoevsky writes, "On an exceptionally hot evening early in July, a young man came out of the garret in which he lodged in S Place and walked slowly, as though in hesitation, towards K Bridge." That hesitation is the whole book. His name is Raskolnikov, a poor ex-student, feverish, isolated, too clever for his own good, and we are about to follow his mind down a staircase it cannot climb back up. Keep two things about him in view as we go. He is genuinely good in flashes. He gives his last few coins to a grieving family almost without thinking, and that is exactly what makes his descent so frightening. This is not a villain, it is a decent, gifted young man who has talked himself into a monstrous idea. And he is desperately, dangerously alone, sealed inside that yellow room with nothing but his own thoughts, which is the one soil an idea like his needs in order to grow. Here is the whole novel in one sentence. A brilliant young man murders a pawnbroker to prove he is one of the extraordinary men who stand above the law, and then discovers that the only law he truly broke was the one written inside himself, and that the way back from that is not escape but confession, suffering and love. Everything turns on a single seductive idea. Raskolnikov has written an article dividing humanity into two kinds of people: the ordinary many who exist to obey and to be ruled, and a rare few, the Napoleons, the world movers, who are permitted to transgress, to shed blood if their idea demands it. The murder is his experiment. He wants to know which kind he is. Dostoevsky's genius is to make you feel the pull of that theory, and then to show you, with unbearable patience, exactly how a human conscience takes its revenge. We will walk it in 5 beats: the theory, the axe, the cat and mouse, the two sufferers, and the crossroads. First, the theory. Raskolnikov lies in his airless garret, sick with hunger and pride, turning over an idea that flatters him even as it poisons him. Ordinary people, he decides, must live obediently and have no right to break the law because they are ordinary. But the extraordinary man, the one who has something new to give the world, has an inner right to let his conscience step over certain obstacles if that is the only way to carry out his idea. Dostoevsky puts it plainly on the page. The second category all transgress the law. They are destroyers or disposed to destruction according to their capacities. And there is a colder line underneath it, the seductive whisper of every gifted, suffering ego. Pain and suffering are always inevitable for a large intelligence and a deep heart. In other words, if I am great, my pain proves it, and my pain entitles me. Hear how modern that is. It is the exact self-flattering logic of the founder who breaks the law and calls it disruption, the trader who cheats and calls it edge, the person who tells themselves the ordinary rules are for ordinary people and results will excuse the method. The most dangerous lie you can be told is the one that quietly promotes you above the rules that protect everyone else, and the most dangerous person to tell it to you is you. And notice what the theory quietly does to other people. The instant Raskolnikov splits the world into the extraordinary few and the ordinary many, the old pawnbroker stops being a person at all. She becomes an obstacle, a louse, a sum of money standing between him and his destiny. That is the real machinery of every crime, and it is not ancient history. Almost all cruelty, large and small, begins with the same silent act of subtraction, turning a human being into a thing that is simply in your way. Second, the axe. If the theory is clean and cold, the murder is anything but. Dostoevsky refuses to make it heroic. Raskolnikov sneaks an axe under his coat, climbs to the pawnbroker's flat in a fog of fever, and kills the old woman. Clumsily, horribly, nothing like the decisive act of will he had rehearsed 100 times in his head. And then the plan detonates. Her gentle, simple-minded sister walks in, sees him, and he kills her too, an innocent he never meant to touch, to cover the first. He stumbles out, drenched in guilt, and nearly faints on the stairs. Everything he stole, he can barely bring himself to look at. This is the gap the whole book lives inside, the distance between how we rehearse a terrible decision in the safety of our own minds and what it actually costs when we cross the line in the flesh. Whether the line is a betrayal, a lie, or a bridge we can never rebuild. You can plan a crime with your mind, but you commit it with your whole body, and your body keeps the receipt. And that receipt is not guilt in the tidy, moral sense. It is physical. He burns with fever. He cannot eat. He faints in the street. He is dragged back again and again toward the scene like a man who cannot stop pressing on a wound. Dostoevsky understood something psychology would only name a century later, that the body registers what the mind refuses to, and that a conscience you have overruled does not fall silent. It goes underground, and it starts to make you ill. Third, the cat and the mouse. There is no manhunt because there is no evidence. Instead, there is Porfiry, the examining magistrate, a mild, chatty, terrifying man who has read Raskolnikov's article and has already guessed everything, and who now studies him the way you would study an insect under glass. He never accuses. He circles, he flatters, he needles, he lets long silences do the work, and he waits, because he understands that the criminal will not be caught so much as delivered, by his own unbearable need to stop being alone with what he knows. At one point, Porfiry gives him almost fatherly advice, and it doubles as a taunt. Be the sun, and all will see you. the sun has before all to be the sun, meaning you wanted to be a great man, in the light, above others. But a real great man has nothing to hide, and you are hiding a corpse. This is the modern anatomy of guilt. The perfect crime does not fail because a detective finds a clue. It fails because a secret rots outward, poisoning every conversation, until you are interrogating yourself harder than any policeman ever could, and the only thing you want in the world is to be caught so it can finally stop. Porfiry never once raises his voice, and that is the horror of him. He does not need to. He simply keeps holding out the one thing Raskolnikov's pride cannot accept and his soul cannot live without: the chance to stop pretending. Watch how the pressure is entirely internal. There is no evidence, no witness, no trap that would stand up in any court. The only thing closing in on this man is himself, and that is the most modern idea in the whole novel, that the harshest prison a person can be locked inside is the one built from their own unspoken secret. Fourth, the two sufferers. Into this airless world walks Sonia, a young girl driven into prostitution to keep her starving family alive. A person the world has thrown away, who nonetheless carries a faith and a mercy that Raskolnikov cannot understand and cannot stop coming back to. He is drawn to her because she suffers as he does, but without his pride. She has been degraded and does not let it make her cruel. And it is to her, not to the magistrate, that he finally breaks. When he confesses, he does not say he killed a woman for money. He says something far stranger and truer, and it is the hinge of the entire novel. Did I murder the old woman? I murdered myself, not her. I crushed myself once for all, forever. He set out to prove he was superhuman, and he is saved, begins to be saved, by the one person who never once pretended to be anything but broken. That is the counter-image to every hustle culture fantasy of strength. Real courage, the book insists, is not standing above other people. It is kneeling down beside them. And to be truly seen by one human being, all the way to the bottom, is more terrifying and more healing than any theory could ever be. And Sonia's power over him has nothing to do with cleverness. She never argues with his theory at all. She simply refuses to stop treating him as a human being worth saving, even after he has told her the worst thing about himself. In a book crowded with people performing strength, the theory, the pride, the cold superiority, she is the one genuinely strong character, and her strength looks from the outside exactly like weakness. She forgives, she endures, she stays. That is the quiet argument at the heart of the novel, that mercy is not softness, and that the person who can kneel is stronger than the one who insists on standing above. Fifth, the crossroads. Sonia does not offer him comfort. She gives him a command, and it is almost unbearable. Go at once, this very minute, stand at the crossroads, bow down, first kiss the earth which you have defiled, and then bow down to all the world, and say to all men aloud, I am a murderer. Confession, she tells him, is not the end of his life, but the only door out of the tomb he has sealed himself inside. And slowly, agonizingly, he obeys. He goes to the public square, he bows to the earth, and eventually he gives himself up. But the real turn comes later, in a Siberian prison, where his pride finally cracks and love breaks through the ice he has lived behind, and a new life begins that the book only dares to point toward. Notice what the punishment was all along. It was never the sentence, never Siberia. It was the isolation, the airless, superior loneliness of a man who had placed himself above everyone else. And the way back, the only way back, was the thing our age treats as the ultimate humiliation. To bow down, to admit he was wrong, to stop being extraordinary, and to rejoin the ordinary, suffering human race. It is worth sitting with how strange that ending is by our standards. We are trained to read confession as defeat, apology as weakness, needing other people as a failure of self-sufficiency. Dostoevsky turns every one of those upside down. In his world, the strong, self-made man who rises above the herd is not free at all. He is buried alive inside himself, and the humiliating act of bowing down is the only thing that rolls the stone away. The last image of the book is not a courtroom or a cell. It is a man in the snow at the edge of the world, finally able to weep and finally able to be loved. So what does all of it add up to? Dostoevsky is answering a question that feels more modern every year. What happens to a person who decides the rules are beneath them? His answer is not that such a person gets caught. It is that such a person gets alone. Raskolnikov's theory promised him a shortcut over the wall that separates the great from the ordinary, and instead it walled him off from every other living soul, until a shared human world became a prison of one. The murder was almost beside the point. The real crime was the pride that made another person's life a mere obstacle to his idea. And the cure was not punishment inflicted from outside, but surrender chosen from within. The confession he fought with everything he had, because our era, like his, treats admitting we were wrong as a kind of death, when in fact it is the only way out of the cell we build for ourselves. That is why the book is not called Crime and Justice or Crime and Consequence. It is Crime and Punishment, and the punishment Dostoevsky means is not Siberia. Siberia is almost a relief. It arrives at the very end, and by then the real sentence has long been served. The punishment was every single day between the murder and the confession, the fever, the paranoia, the unbridgeable distance from every person he loved. The law of the state can only take your freedom. The law he actually broke took something worse. It took him out of the human world and left him alone with a self he could no longer stand. Here is the one thing to carry out of this book and into your week. Watch for the moment you start dividing the world into ordinary people and yourself. It rarely arrives wearing an axe. It arrives softly as a small permission. The rule that surely does not apply to someone as busy, as talented, as right as you. The corner cut because your cause is good. The person quietly downgraded from a human being into an obstacle in the way of your idea. That is Raskolnikov's first step, and every step after it only follows. So this week, catch the thought when it comes, the one that whispers, "You are the exception," and instead of acting on it, do the harder thing the whole book is built to teach. Come down off the wall, treat the person in front of you as fully real, and if you have already crossed a line, say the sentence our pride hates most, out loud, to someone who deserves it. I was wrong. It is not a humiliation. It is the door back into the human race, and you do not need to have done anything monstrous for this to apply to you. The theory of the extraordinary man runs quietly under almost every ambitious life. The small exemptions we grant ourselves, the people we file away as in the way. The certainty that our reasons are better than everyone else's rules. Dostoevsky's warning was never mainly about murder. It is about the slow, comfortable coldness that lets a bright, busy person stop feeling the full reality of anyone else. And his cure is deliberately humble. Notice one person today, completely, and let them be exactly as real as you are. Dostoevsky spends 600 pages making one quiet, radical case. That no idea, however brilliant, is worth more than a single ordinary human life, including your own. Raskolnikov wanted to be a Napoleon, above the law, above the crowd. What saved him was giving that up, bowing to the earth, being seen by Sonia, and rejoining the world he had tried to rise above. If this walk through crime and punishment gave you something worth keeping, subscribe. A new classic every week, faithfully, in about 20 minutes. Next time, we cross the world to ancient China and Sun Tzu's The Art of War, the book that teaches you how to win before you ever fight. And tell me in the comments, where have you caught yourself believing the rules were for other people? And what did it cost you?